My first intention was to reinforce the meter joints with some dowels, but I couldn't get aligned holes, and the result was a strip between the pieces to each side of the 45 degrees joint. So I decided to cut a groove in the corners, and then glue a spline in each meter joint. I draw a line, perpendicular to the joint line. The position of the line I draw depends on the depth I want to cut the groove. I cut all 4 triangles and I sand the cuts. I will try to cut the grooves in the corners with my handheld circular saw. I will put the door frame in one side of my workbench, with a nail inside the corner, to keep it hanging. With the help of a square, I put the sides of the door to a 45 degrees angle with the surface of the workbench, and I use a nail to keep it in that position. I check the other side, and I hammer another nail to limit the movement. I check that I can take the frame and put it in place again quite easily. I put my saw on the table, and I adjust the depth of cut to have the disc right on the line. I screw a wooden block in front of the frame. And another one behind the frame. Now I clamp a strip of wood to each wooden block. I nail the strip of wood to the wooden block behind the frame, and I take off the clamp. Now I have to install the circular saw fence. The splines I have to insert in the corners are thicker than the saw disc, so I try to adjust the discs to one side of the middle of the corner. I push the fence against the strip, and I tighten the saw fence nut. I make the first cut. I shift the saw. I lift the strip. I change the frame corner and I hold it with a spline clamp. I clamp the strip in place and I cut the corner. And I do the same with the other 2 corners. I adjust the saw fence to cut the groove a bit thicker than 2 times the groove I have already cut. After a couple of adjustments, it looks like the spline will fit nice in the groove. But you will see that I have to make 2 separate cuts. So I have a remaining thin piece of wood in between. And like before, I turn the frame and I cut all the corners. The circular saw fence is not very rigid, and to avoid the movement of the saw from side to side, and to keep the fence against the strip, I need to put my hand there, pushing the fence, but I don't like to have my hand there at all. I still have to cut the remaining thin piece of wood in the corners, so I have to adjust the fence again, to cut that thin piece. It looks like all the splines will fit quite well. It was not easy to cut all that thin pieces of wood, but at least the saw cuts them in the base and takes them off the groove. And there you can see that the dowel's holes were not aligned. After I cut all the corners, I try to flatten the base of the groove with this file, which is right the same thick of the groove. Well, I must admit that two of the splines fit a bit loose in the grooves, and the other two splines fit a bit tight. I pour glue on both sides of the splines and I put them in place. And after the glue dries, I cut the excess of the splines with a tenon saw. I sand them and I check how the splines look like in the corners. I suppose some solid wood splines would look better, but these thin pieces of marquetry were enough to me to try this technique. Anyway, someday I will try to make a better jig to do this. Thanks for watching. You can find all my woodworking videos in my YouTube channel. And if you like my videos, thanks for subscribing to my channel.